Hi guys, my name is Nadya Andreeva from spinachandyoga.com, and today I have a very interesting guest and a very exciting topic for a lot of women. Today's guest is Donna James, and we did a detox program with Donna in the past, and we're really close friends. Donna is a triple certified nutritionist who practices functional medicine and in general works also with women around emotional eating issues. I found Donna's work very inspiring. She helped me personally a lot. And today we're going to talk about nighttime snacking, especially an issue of craving sweets after dinner time. And today's conversation was inspired by an article that I read on one of the plane rides. And it was in Women's Health magazine, so I'll show you the article. That's kind of the article. And it was about late night snack attack. And basically what the article said that research shows that many women take in nearly half of their daily calories at or after dinner. And then another study found that a third of people eat 15% of their calories after 11 p.m. And I found this statistic staggering because for me, something just turns off at 8 p.m. and the kitchen for me is closed, both physically and mentally. I just don't crave food anymore. But a lot of my clients have this issue of craving food at night. They can have perfect diet and then start craving sweets after dinner, like when they put their kids to sleep or when everything is done. And today with Donna, we're going to discuss both the emotional and physical aspect of how to deal with cravings. And basically we're going to talk about ways to prevent it, what to do if you're already in the moment of eating something, and then how to help your body recover. So thank you, Donna, for being with me today.
Thanks for inviting me to talk with you, Nadia.
So what do you think, what is the reason that so many people eat the majority of their calories after dinner?
Principally, it's going to be an emotional component. So many women have had an incredibly stressful day. They are potentially frustrated with what's going on at work. They've got lots of unlimited emails to attend to. There can be frustrations with how they feel about themselves or their relationships and so forth. And they often go towards sugary foods to top them up, as opposed to really looking at how they can fulfill themselves in other ways. So I had a nighttime sugar addiction myself. And while my diet was very good during the day and even at dinner, at around 10 p.m., I would really want something sweet. Mm-hmm. And it felt like a visceral response. It felt very physical, but I was aware it actually wasn't physical. It was more emotional. And I struggled with this for probably about 18 months, and it initially happened when I'd had a breakup with a relationship for 5 years. And the first 3 weeks after the breakup, I started baking cookies around 10 p.m. Mm-hmm. And then 3 weeks into it, I was like, oh my goodness, I used to talk to my boyfriend at the time at 10 p.m. and that's what I'm doing. I'm replacing the two. Mm-hmm. And so once I saw that realization, I was like, oh, I'm going to change this and not do that. And I stopped doing that for a short period of time. And then months and months and months went by, and maybe I did or maybe I didn't. I don't recall it being an issue, but it certainly came back, and came back with a bit of a vengeance. And I was baking these cookies, and I didn't really care to eat them, but once they were there, of course I was going to eat them. And within 3 days, all the cookies that I made were gone, and I'd then be inspired to make some more cookies, and I'd make them out of anything. It could be raw cookies because I wouldn't have any baking materials at home. And it was really troubling for me because I felt like I wasn't in control. Mm-hmm. That was the most frustrating aspect of it. And I actually worked with a coach to help me resolve this for the first 4 weeks. And we just said that I was absolute abstinence, that I absolutely could not bake any cookies at 10 p.m. And if I did, there was a consequence in place. And that consequence was immediate, because often we're very much in the reward mechanism versus a consequence mechanism.
What was your consequence?
My consequence was I had to go to work the next day with no makeup on and in a pair of flat shoes. And if you know me, I wear heels because I'm short, 5'4", and I wear makeup because, to me, if I was to go to work without makeup on, then I'd feel very, very unprofessional. So right at that time, if I was to think about baking cookies, I'd go, okay, well, the next day I have to go and see, maybe 15 clients without makeup. I was like, oh my goodness, no, I can't do that. So I had to be present right at that point in time and say, is this what I want to do? And so the answer was therefore no. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't really want to bake those cookies. And the first 3 days were incredibly challenging to stop doing that. And this is about breaking the habit. And then after day 3, it became easier. Day 4, I was like, oh, I got through this 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. And I continued on doing that. And then a month went by and I hadn't baked cookies. And for me, that was really empowering, that I could actually break that. I started to reverse the conditioned response, 10 p.m., go and bake. But I wasn't really getting to the core root of what was going on. It was just that there was a punishment that I was imposing upon myself that was greater for me than any type of joy I was going to get from the baking the cookies and eating them. And so I sort of fell back into the habit, and it was through a conversation with someone where they said, well, part of self-love is self-trust. And I was like, oh my God, I don't trust myself in the kitchen. Like, I just don't trust myself in the kitchen. And I was like, oh wow, I'm missing some self-love. And I never would have thought that, because for me, self-love was a lot of self-care, taking care of yourself, being kind, setting up boundaries, connecting with friends, doing all of that. And I felt like that I had that. It was a really good practice, but I didn't have that self-trust. And so then once I realized that, I was like, oh, so if this is a little bit of self-love, I'm just nurturing myself. That's what it is. And then I was like, oh, if I'm nurturing myself, then actually all I need to do is make myself a cup of tea, because that was nurturing in itself. And so I did that, and that was the change for me. It was, oh, I'm missing that fulfillment, and I'm going to switch that and have a cup of tea. So I think there's many different reasons why we will eat in the evening, but a lot of it comes down to an emotional reason, and it's finding out what that emotional reason is for you, and then you break it.
Yeah.
So for me, if I was to try and bake cookies at 10 p.m., I would be so sad. Like, I couldn't do it, because it wouldn't provide me with any sense of fulfillment, and it would be like really self-abusive to me, because I know why I'm actually doing it.
Yeah. I think your story is very insightful in terms of just looking back, you're able to see what was causing it and how you resolved it. I also see in my personal experience that a lot of women don't have any fun or pleasure during the day because they feel guilty taking time for it during the day. So by the end of the night, food is the only pleasure. And what's more pleasurable than to have sugar that eventually will cause the addiction? And it's really interesting that you mentioned 10 p.m. because in Ayurveda, the whole day is broken down into times where a particular dosha or particular energy is ruling our body. And during the day, time between like around 12, our digestion is the strongest. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the pitta time, fire time. So that's when the digestion is really strong. And then it changes. And then at 10 p.m., it starts to arise again. So if you don't go to bed by 10 p.m., it will start to awaken. So it's much likely that the person will get hungry. And it can be emotional, but it can also be physical, just because that fire aspect is awakened again.
Yes.
So I think it's also really interesting to know how to stay in tune with those energies.
Absolutely. And what we want to do is look at people's schedules. So if you are going to bed at midnight, then you actually do want to have something very small to eat around 10 p.m. Because if you're eating at 7 p.m. but going to bed at 10, but going to bed at midnight, that's a really long time space before you're actually going to eat the next morning. And if you're not eating something small about 2 hours before bed, it's highly likely that your sleep will be not as restful as it otherwise would be because you've got these blood sugar imbalances. So,
That's so interesting. But
yeah.
then why, how would the intermittent fasting? Because I usually eat around 7:30, but if I go to bed by 11, I'm not going to eat the next day probably until 10 or 11 in the morning. So I have at least from 7 p.m. until like 10 in the morning. Do
Well,
you
that's
think
interesting because intermittent fasting recommends a 12-hour
so? If
time
it's
period
longer,
between your last meal and your first meal. Yeah,
is
so
it bad if it's
longer.
longer?
You're pushing it a little bit, but your body adapts to these things. So
Hmm.
if that works for you, then that's perfectly fine. But intermittent fasting says 12 hours, and that's what I recommend to people too. So if they're eating at 12, if they're eating at 10 p.m., then they probably don't want breakfast at 8 a.m. They probably want something around 10 a.m. and to have it then.
Okay,
Just go,
cool. I'm getting
yeah.
a personal consultation in.
That's fine. And also, just going back to the physical side of things, is that during the day, we are exposed to so many different stresses. And when we're stressed, our body produces cortisol to be able to cope with those stresses. Now, what happens is that cortisol will actually use up your body's own supply of serotonin because there's this nice dance between your stress hormones and your neurotransmitter levels. So if you're constantly exposing yourself to stresses or you're not handling stress as well as what you should be or finding ways to release it, then you are going to use your supply of serotonin. And serotonin is that feel-good neurotransmitter. When serotonin levels are low, you crave sugar and carbohydrates, because the fastest way to increase your serotonin levels in your brain is to eat sugar and carbs because it transports it through the brain barrier and into the brain. So there's that piece of it as well to be mindful of.
Yeah.
Now that one there is
Yeah, go ahead.
go. So from a correction standpoint with that, if there is low serotonin levels, then you can put something called 5-HTP in, which will just help to elevate your serotonin levels and therefore decrease a little bit of those carbohydrate cravings.
Okay, cool. And we'll talk a little bit more about supplements that can help to decrease cravings. But let's talk a little bit about what happens if we eat too much after dinner before going to sleep. So,
Mm.
what are the some side effects? Like some are pretty clear, like your digestion is overloaded and you wake up tired the next morning.
Right.
Um, but from a physiological perspective, what is happening to the body?
Mm. So besides the digestive piece, which you touched on, there's another important piece, which is when you eat those sugary foods, the insulin that's triggered suppresses a hormone called growth hormone, which is triggered when you sleep. And growth hormone helps to keep lean muscle there. It helps the body to burn fat, and it helps keep the brain very sharp. So if you are loading up your body with carbs and sweets, then you're going to suppress that response. And in the long term, that may not give you the body shape that you're looking for. It may age you further, and certainly from a cognition perspective, it's going to decrease your sharpness.
Cool.
Yeah.
And yes, you will wake up tired. I think that for me is the huge motivator because I want to wake up feeling light and rested, not like I was working the whole night.
Right. It's interesting. I'm not a late night eater and I don't have big meals, but 2 weeks ago, it was a Sunday night and I had this meal that was heavy. It was like a 3 or 4 course meal with maybe sweets afterwards, and I couldn't sleep. I had just an awful night's sleep because there was just so much food in my stomach, and a lot of it was carb based. There was like risotto and pasta and things that I would not normally eat. But after that I was like, I'm done. I'm not eating this way on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
I don't know why it seems to be fine on a Friday night, but on a Sunday night I didn't feel good.
Yeah. So let's talk about ways to prevent cravings from even happening in the first place. Because I think managing craving when it's already there is a lot harder than doing something throughout the day to prevent it from happening. So let's share some of the strategies from your side, and then I'll share some tips as well.
So on the physical side, making sure that your diet is really clean and balanced is key, so you don't have these blood sugar spikes throughout the day. So what you eat around 3 p.m. will dictate how you feel around 9 p.m. So if
what should we eat?
Eating your snacks, so you should eat principally a plant-based diet, so lots of vegetables. So lunch and dinner should be lots of vegetables, colorful vegetables, and then a small amount of protein, whether that's fish or grass-fed meat or hemp seed if you're vegan, something like that, with a small amount of fat such as avocado and olive oil. That's the basic structure for the plate, which will stabilize those blood sugar levels. And you want to eat every 3 hours or so. So then around 3 or 4 o'clock for your snack, something raw. Which could be a piece of fruit. You and I agree that you should only eat fruit on its own.
Yes.
Or it could be half an avocado, depending on the season. It could be a green juice or a small carrot juice mixed with almond milk, something like that. But just try to keep things as close as possible to being in their natural state. It could be a mini meal.
Yeah.
So I typically have a mini meal because I'm not eating until about sort of 8:30, 9 p.m. And if you eat like that, then your blood sugar levels will be stable. So you won't be driven to eat carbohydrates because your blood sugar level has taken a dive. That's from the physical perspective. You want to be careful of how salty your meal is in the evening, because if the meal is salty, then you will tend to crave carbohydrates immediately. You'll tend to crave carbohydrates and sugar immediately after your meal, to sort of just to balance out that salt-sweet combination, like the yin and the yang. I found that incredibly fascinating and experimented on myself on that there. And then if you are about to indulge in something that doesn't have anything to do with the physical and it's more to do with an emotional response, is really just pull back from that and be very present and aware at that point in time, and ask yourself, is this going to make you happy? Sometimes the answer is going to be yes. It might be, you know what, that piece of dark chocolate is really going to make me happy right now because I'm going to sit down and have a cup of tea with that dark chocolate and enjoy every single mouthful of it. And if that's the case, then you go ahead and you have it. But if it's like, no, you know what, this isn't going to make me happy, it might feel good during the moment because food certainly provides a relief and it provides a distraction from what's going on in our life. But if you look beyond that to say it just isn't, then what you want to do is go and do something else. Like find something else that actually makes you feel good. And I recommend to my clients that they come up with a list of 5 things that they can easily do. And then they go and do one of those things. So it might be reading a spiritual book of some sort, which I actually find to be one of the best strategies, because people then become engaged in that and start to expand their mind and look at other ways that make them feel just really, really whole within themselves. Or it could be taking a bath with some beautiful oils, playing some music, connecting with a friend, journaling, doing some meditation, lighting some incense. Just find whatever it is that actually makes you happy rather than food.
Yeah, I completely agree with all your recommendations, and I think a balanced meals throughout the day is one of the key ones. And in Ayurveda, it is said that a balanced meal should include all 6 tastes. And all six tastes are included, you are not likely to crave something afterwards. And in the American diet, salty, sweet, and sour are very present, but bitter taste is very much lacking. So
Mm,
if people add bitter greens, for example, or like for a lot of people, their bitter taste comes only in terms of coffee.
right.
But you can add it in other ways, like dandelion root tea, or even kale. Kale will do it.
Yeah.
And then add a sprinkle of lemon or lime juice in whatever you're eating. And that helps to keep the meal balanced in terms of sensations.
That makes sense. That's
And
great.
yeah, and I think another tip that you mentioned in terms of adding healthy fats, like not being afraid of fats,
Right.
coconut oil, avocado, ghee, and one of the snacks that you mentioned, which I love, is roasted seaweed, like
Oh, yes.
snacks
Yeah.
with a little bit of avocado. And for me,
Mm.
it's such a perfect afternoon snack.
Yeah, I love that one. And if you look at that, so for everybody, that's a roasted nori snack with a little bit of sea salt and some avocado um, inside of that. Like from an Ayurvedic perspective, does that have all the six tastes?
No.
It doesn't. What's it missing? The sweet, I suppose.
Um, Well, I guess avocado can be kind of sweet. It
Mm.
would be perfect if you add a sprinkle of lime juice
Oh, well, that's easy to do.
and yeah, and maybe have it with what would be bitter, a little bit of a bitter taste.
What about some,
You
would you
can,
say cayenne pepper or some cumin or
I
something?
mean, cumin and cayenne would make it just perfectly balanced.
I'm going to try that now.
You
This
can
is why
also,
Nadia and I like speaking with each other because it's balancing.
yeah, I usually add lime juice and cumin, which also makes it really nice. And it helps to balance the coldness of avocado. It just warms it up.
Right.
So yeah, guys, this is the perfect snack. And in terms of self-care, that aspect that I mentioned, that in terms of women not having or feeling guilty about having rest time or playtime during the day, I also encourage my clients to make a list of things that make them go like, ah, like things that make them really, really happy.
Yes.
And it can be something simple as like watching my kids or lying with my dog and petting her and doing those things before dinner time.
Great
So
advice.
when I had a big detox in Russia with Yoga Journal, I asked my women to take a bath before dinner.
Mm,
And everyone loved it because you're nervous when you eat a meal and your nervous system is completely calm. So you're much less likely to search for that pleasure in food. Um,
mm.
So I think those are some of the main tips that I found helpful for people.
That's great. And it's a really valid point that you raised about women and us feeling guilty about not taking time for yourself. Like as women and that feminine side of us, it's all about taking time and idle time because when you're idle, you can really bring out that feminine side of you. It's that space that enables you to sort of be all juicy and melty and wonderful and giving to other people and it's you will find space because when you will find time when you give yourself that time. What happens is that the
Time
brain's
slows
actually more
down.
creative. Yeah, it's true. You are so much more creative, you have better insights, and so rather than just slogging away at work, you'll come up with these insights and say, "Oh, this is what we're doing," and you just create time. You really do. And I was one of those people that felt incredibly guilty about taking idle time, and I think it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I specifically remember the time. It was 2 years ago. It was April last year. It was the first time that I'd just taken some time out to do absolutely nothing and laze around on the couch and do no reading that involved my work. And it was then that I realized just how powerful that was in terms of you relaxing
Yeah.
and just getting into your own self.
Yeah, and I love what Claudia Welsh says, the author of Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life. She talks a lot about cortisol and adrenaline and how it affects a woman.
Mm.
And she gave an example. She's also like a very ambitious, goal-oriented, or used to be goal-oriented woman. And she's like, I felt guilty lying down on the couch. And
Mm.
I would have a magazine nearby in case somebody walks in, and then I'll pretend that I'm actually doing something, like I'm reading. And that idea of like always being on the lookout to make sure that we please people and act in the society's respect that 9 to 5 you should be busy, or
Right.
like whatever, if you have kids you
Yeah.
should be busy, keeps us in that state of busyness and feeling rushed and feeling stressed out, which it will lead to something negative in the evening.
Right. Yes, there needs to be a really a release of that.
Yeah.
And it's for you to be happy, and that's ultimately what we're pursuing. It's making your day or designing your day in a way that is going to make you happy. So ultimately, we all have the same amount of time, and it just depends on how we prioritize things.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about priorities. Feeling good should be a
Yeah,
priority.
that's the ultimate.
Yes. So let's talk about what do we do if something happened, maybe we were not able to take care of ourselves enough and the craving hits.
Mhm.
What do we do?
So right at that point in time, it's I would really encourage you just to step back and be very much aware of that, and not give in to that craving. Like, do something else that is going to satisfy you instead, which could be as simple as making a cup of tea. If you are really like, I absolutely need something sweet, I know this is being driven by an emotional response, but I want to have that in my mouth, then a piece of fruit by itself is always going to be satiating because it cuts through that sweet craving. It could be just berries, or frozen berries, or cherries. It could be warmed up almond milk with a cinnamon stick, which
Yeah.
is really wonderful. That's one of my favorites. And you could put some cacao in it and make it chocolate almond milk. A chia seed pudding, where you make that with fresh almond milk, and if you make it with fresh almond milk, which is just almonds and water with a couple of dates blended together, then you don't need any other sweetener to go with it, because it's just got that hint of sweetness coming in from the dates.
Yeah.
And dates themselves, let's say 2 dates with an almond pressed into the center, I think, is a wonderful way to cut through that sugar craving. You just don't want to have any more than two, because they're just a natural sugar
Yeah.
anyway. And a cup of tea is really fantastic. I discovered at your place you had a banana and chocolate tea. I have not been able to find it in New York, but it was really, really fantastic. And
Yeah.
I found a chocolate mint tea by Republic of Tea, which is the
Hmm.
same brand. And when I was going through my sugar issues, that was just fantastic for me. Chocolate mint tea with a teaspoon of coconut sugar, and I would sit down and have that, and it was enough to just break through that sugar craving there. Funnily enough, it is now so sweet for me that I can't have it, and it sort of reminds me of that time where I felt a little bit out of control. But
Yeah.
there are options out there, and what you want to do is come from a solutions-based perspective. So it's, what is it that I really need right now? And that's a very powerful question. What is it that I need right now
Yeah.
to truly break through that sugar craving? And sometimes it's going to be something physical to cut through that taste on your tongue, and other times it's going to be really working on that mind side of things.
Yeah. And I want to cover just one of those mind things is in mindfulness training that I was doing, one of the main aspects that we were taught is the worst thing you can do when you have a craving is to focus on that craving.
Of
But because
course.
whatever you focus on is going to keep growing. So if you
Yes.
get the craving and you're like, I shouldn't have it, I shouldn't have it, I shouldn't have it, you're become so focused, like laser focused on this one thing. And as a result, most likely you're actually going to have it. So the easiest thing that I found is, because for me, the craving usually won't happen at night, but it can happen like sometime in the midday. So for me to transfer the attention from the craving to how I want to feel and focus on that and to actually feel it is
Mm.
incredibly powerful. So I usually encourage my clients to come back to your wellness vision. Like you have a craving, come back to your wellness vision. Is that in line? Is that supporting your wellness vision? If
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're craving is going to bring you a step closer to the way you want to feel, go for it. If it brings you further away, then why?
Right.
And for me, that's just a very powerful motivator.
Yes, it's a great way to look at it.
And I think in terms of having healthy indulgences, at the like on the cases when you do decide to have it, can be incredibly helpful because some people are good with restriction, other people are very rebellious,
Mm-hmm.
and I think by nature, some people like to hear what to do, and they are so good at following that to-do list without questions. And other people, they need to come to that internally.
Right.
So for them to have a healthy thing in the fridge is going to save them from running last minute to some deli and getting garbage.
Right. That's exactly right. And the ultimate goal is for you to be able to say yes or no to these sweet foods. It's not cutting it out in its entirety and you're never going to have a sweet food ever again. You just want to be able to say yes or no to it.
Yes, and feel good about it, whatever you say.
Right, exactly. And just going back to your point about this, the oscillation that can happen in your brain with this, should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? When you focus on it, the brain actually doesn't understand the negative.
Yes.
So it just doesn't understand the negative. So if you say, I can't have the chocolate, or it's all it is going to hear is chocolate, chocolate. And when we were taught mindfulness, your teachers would say, well, don't think about the pink elephant. And of course, that's all you can think about is the pink elephant.
Yeah.
So it's understand that voice and know that when it's telling you to go ahead and have the chocolate or the cookies or whatever it is, that you don't need to listen to that. You can just tune down the volume on that. That voice will go away once you make a decision. It's going to go away if you say yes, and it's going to go away if you say no. So if you say absolutely not, I'm not going to have this, then it disappears.
And yeah, focus on something else. I think the easiest way is to focus on something else, not just stop the thought because it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the last scenario. So something happened, and in the beginning it will happen because I think the road might be clear in front of us, but there will be some detours along the way. And in the beginning, they will be quite frequent for a lot of people. So, for example, we committed to not having late night snacks, but we ended up having them. How can we help the body recover quickly from it?
First thing to do is really just forgive yourself. Like, don't beat yourself up over it. Like, expect relapses. It's actually okay. And then the next day, just get back on track. Like, start the healthy eating plan. And the next morning, have chia seed pudding for breakfast, or a green juice, or 2 poached eggs with some avocados. Like something that makes you feel good. Just like let it go.
Yeah.
It's okay. You want to be aware of if you are continually doing that, if you're continually having something and it's a habit, then you want to look at breaking that. But as a one-off, it's like forgive yourself. It's okay. Move on from that. Don't let the cycle keep going.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a matter of not giving into that cycle. And the first one is forgiving, because the worst thing you can do is first you abuse your body with too much food, and then you abuse your body with guilt and shame.
Yes.
So it's not helping anyone. And in terms of digestion, I think having a ginger tea afterwards will kind of speed up
That's a great idea.
Maybe bring in a little bit more circulation to the digestive tract. But another thing that I find helpful for a lot of people is have triphala afterwards, because it's kind of like a tonic for the colon. It's not too laxative, but it kind of helps to make sure that everything is eliminated.
Okay, that's good to know.
And
I haven't used that tea before. I mean, many Ayurvedic practitioners talk about it, and you've spoken about it on many occasions, but I've never used it myself.
I can't say that it fits everyone 100%. Some people do well with it, but they feel it that's their herb right away.
Okay.
But the unique thing about trufella is you can use it for so many things. Like if you swish trufella in your mouth, you're not going to want to have sweets
Oh, right.
because it has all six tastes in it, and it's a pretty strong taste, but it does something with your mouth that first it makes your taste buds a lot more sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
so you taste food a lot more. And in general, it just the aftertaste of trufella is not something where you want to put sweet stuff on top.
So
So
that's a great idea to have before as well.
yes, like after dinner.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And let's, before we finish up for just a minute, let's mention some other supplements or herbs that might be helpful for people to prevent craving.
Chromium is fantastic. So most of us are deficient in chromium because there are very few sources of dietary chromium. And to be honest, I can't think of any at the moment where you actually get that from. Are you familiar where you can get chromium from in your diet?
No, at
Yeah,
Whole
yeah,
Foods.
yeah, exactly. Supplement form. Anyway, if it wasn't your diet, you'd have to eat an abundance of whatever it was. But yeah, supplemental form. So chromium helps to get glucose into the cells faster. Vanadium. So vanadium is in black pepper. So certainly add black pepper to your foods, and if you're looking for a great blood sugar supporting supplement, look for one with chromium in it, vanadium. Cinnamon is excellent,
Yeah.
like really, really good. It's just naturally sweet anyway. And so add that to your foods, or if you drink coffee, you can add that to your coffee as well. And that's very good at regulating glucose levels.
Yeah.
They're the three that I tend to use. And there was a herb that Gemina that
Yes.
we were talking about earlier. That one works well. It helps to decrease those cravings and suppresses the appetite a little bit. So when I'm using a supplement, I don't go for the individual components of those. I work with a supplement. It's a brand called Vitamin Nutrients called Blood Sugar Support, and that's very, very helpful in decreasing sugar cravings.
Yeah, and I think I never used a formula, but I have tried chromium and I have tried gymnema tea, and I find gymnema such a cool herb because you drink it and it tastes a little bit bitter. But then afterwards, if you try to eat something sweet, it tastes like nothing.
Right. Which is
And
great.
yeah, I think I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's just one of those things that when you try it, you're just amazed because it shows that our taste buds can adapt to so many things and so many things will influence them. And I think once the sugar is out of the diet or at least greatly reduced in the diet, what we notice is we can taste sweetness so much more.
That's exactly right. You just resensitize your taste buds to sugar
Yeah.
So that's when a peach tastes incredibly sweet and delicious and wonderful.
Cucumbers taste sweet.
What does?
Cucumbers taste sweet.
Well, they do. I love a good cucumber juice because it does taste a little
Yeah,
sweet.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a matter of actually readapting taste buds and then enjoying sweet tastes and other foods besides just regular sugar.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Donna, so much for being with us. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, which is www.foodcoachnyc.com. They can find me on Facebook, which is Food Coach NY, on Twitter, Food Coach NYC, and yeah, and reach out to me, say hello, let Nadia and I know whether you receive some benefit from this call, or feedback's always great.
Yes, thank you. And guys, leave us comments below the video. Let us know if you have any tips for managing sugar cravings at night. Maybe there will be something that's really useful for other readers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.